Good evening. This is not Generous Degenerates. This is not Ring 'em Up. This is just the boys.
It's just the boys, dude.
The boys. The boys are hanging out tonight. I am Todd. With me tonight is Aaron. And Aaron, I have a fun fact to share with you because I think that this is a big occasion because this is actually the 1 year anniversary of the first time you and I did a podcast solo.
Is it really?
Today.
No
Yes.
way.
Yeah, look back at the Facebook memories. Saw Aaron and Todd doing a podcast together, and I was like, "Man, is that the first time we had ever done it together?" And I rolled back through all the
Just
old
solo,
podcasts,
yeah, or just us two, yeah.
just you and I. Yeah. So, what an occasion for you and I to be doing a podcast together again, but on the 1 year anniversary of our
Seems
just you and I
apropos.
roasting together. It's crazy because obviously you came into Rally Towel Sports through Corey, and Bobby and I didn't really know you, but I mean, just like the immediate chemistry that you and I had that night. And as soon as we got done, we were both like, man, that was really fucking good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
Really good. But brother, how you doing, man? It's been a minute since we've even chatted.
It's been a minute. Too. Yeah, I'm doing good, man. It's summer is rolling along. It seems like it goes by way too quickly. Still seems to be the case. Been moving around a lot, but playing a lot of golf, which has been good. Finally I got to see Oppenheimer last week, which is pretty exciting. It's the first time I've been in the theater in a long time. I won't reveal any spoilers for anyone who hasn't had the chance to go yet, but
yeah, please don't.
I won't.
I'm very interested in seeing it still. It's been so for sure pre-COVID since I've stepped foot in the movie theater.
Me too.
And I want to say that it's been like since 2017 since I've seen a movie in theater somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been a hot minute, but I'm ready. Oppenheimer's the one where like I'm gonna go in and watch this one in theater.
Yeah, you definitely have to. It's like, and like I said, I hadn't been to one in forever, and it's like 3 hours. So I went through pretty much a whole jug of popcorn.
Nice.
And it's the theaters are cool now, so they give you beer. I had just a tall draft beer, and kind of just vibed out for 3 hours. It was pretty cool.
It's nice, dude. I have a notable theater story because my brother and I, oh god, this is like 2015, maybe somewhere in that ballpark. We went and saw what was that Leonardo DiCaprio movie where he got mauled by the bear?
The Revenant.
Thank you. Saw The Revenant. Saw that together, and then there was a showing of another movie in the next theater over like 20 minutes after this one was over. And it was when they had started doing like assigned seating for movies, like brand new to the game. And Nick and I were like, let's just go sneak into this movie. Like, all right. Well, so we sneak in. Guy comes up. He's like, hey, you're in our seats. And I'm like, oh man, this isn't row D. We're like sitting in the 18th row.
Right.
He's like, no, it's not row D. Oh man, that sucks. So then we move up like 4 rows. And somebody comes up like, hey, these are our seats. And and Nick goes, what? This isn't row D? And it's like, we got moved like 3 times. And we looked at each other like one more time and we got to get out of here.
See, that's when you got to do it like on the ballpark app where you just look at the app to see what seats are still for sale. And you sit your butt down in those ones.
It was impulsive. It was dangerous.
That's fair.
Nick and I don't often live on that side of the danger zone. That's probably the most dangerous thing I had done.
Wild one, huh?
Yeah, just out of control. And finally, after about 4 moves, we sat down. And I'm sure he remembers the other movie. I don't remember it, but he was like, we got to get out of here. If one more time this happens, I can't do it anymore. But it's a historic movie moment. That was the lot. Like Mary and I have seen one movie together in the 7 years that we've dated. That's
really?
It. Yeah.
So pre-COVID, that was like always our like tradition is that's what we would do on New Year's Day.
Okay.
Because there's no better way to like get out of hangover than you maybe pop a little fruity snack that you only want to eat one of if you kind of catch my drift.
Sure.
Hang out in a dark room and just kind of watch a movie. I think the last one we saw was the OG Knives Out before.
Ooh.
I think that's right. But either way, yeah, it's been so long and I missed it, dude. I love the theater going experience.
It's a
And it
totally
was a good
different
movie to
environment.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've heard. So the only thing I know about Oppenheimer, like at least the course of the movie is it has what has been described as the loudest possible moment in movie and cinematic history.
I wouldn't even. I mean, here's the thing. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It wasn't like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. That's just something that I had read about the movie was it hits a certain decibel level and
I
it's
didn't get to see it. So the movie is actually shot specifically for 70 millimeter
uh-huh.
IMAX, which there's like 12 theaters like that in the whole country.
19 in the whole
Is it
country.
19? Okay.
19. Yeah.
So I didn't even bother with. I was like, we have like the 2D IMAX, and I was like, I'm not even gonna like. I'm sure that would have been a cool experience, but I was just so, and it was hard to get tickets for them anyway. So I was just like so
Sure.
excited to go back to the theater. It didn't really matter to me. Plus, now all the theaters have like the recliner chairs and like, it was nice, man. It
It's a
was good
whole
to get back out there. Snuck in some
yeah.
milk duds.
That's a great movie. All right, let's do this. Top 3 movie snacks for you.
Okay. I mean, just pop without popcorn, right? Because that's just
exclude popcorn. That's everybody's eating popcorn in a movie theater.
So milk duds are an easy one for me.
Yep.
I'm also a big fan, and this is a polarizing one, but I also grabbed some of these too at the theater. Dots. You need something to like balance out the sweet and the salty, or the caramel and the chocolate and the salty of the popcorn. I love dots, and I know not everybody does. And then 3. That's such a. I probably just some like Sour Patch.
Okay.
I think Sour Patch is a solid movie theater.
Yeah, you have to have a length candy, right? Like a Twizzler, or like I like the Sour Patch straws. That's usually that's in my top 3.
That's a good one. I'd fuck around on some Nerds Rope too if they still have it.
That's a good one. So mine is Junior Mints. That's my number 1 movie candy. Again, that is something that like
not a lot of people like the mint chocolate combo sometimes. I'm a fan for like mint chocolate chip, elite ice cream.
It is
chocolate like peppermint patty though, not for me.
Okay, that's fair. So I'm only a post Olive Garden peppermint patty guy. The Andes.
Like Andes?
Yeah. That's the only time I'll eat them is at
Those
Olive
are good.
Yeah.
But that's not like a movie theater.
No, it's not. But Junior Mints, that's the only time I'll eat a Junior Mint is in a movie theater. That's it. And then so Junior Mints, Milk Duds, Sour Patch Straws. That's my 3.
Love it.
I could also say 3A, 3B. I'd probably throw actual sour Skittles into that mix.
I'm also a big like peanut M&M guy.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's
you need a chocolate. You need a chocolate.
Yeah. You got to have chocolate. You got to have something that you can roll 8 to 12 of in your hand at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just you can kind of because you do that with the popcorn. You do it with
yeah. Because you're pacing it's a pace candy, right? I think that's the thing that people don't think about when they get movie theater, when they bring food to a movie theater. It's pace candy. You got to have something that's going to last you for the duration of whatever movie you're going to watch. If you're watching a 90-minute movie, go after it. But if you're in an Oppenheimer or any James Cameron movie, you got to
anything 220 plus.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to watch Avatar, you got to bring lunch and dinner, right? So you got to think about that. But if you're getting like to the over 90 to the 2.5 hour mark, if you have 3 candies, you go chocolate, sour, back to the chocolate. So I always end with the Junior Mints, walking out of there with a little bit of fresher breath than the Skittle breath, the sour Skittle breath or the sour straw breath you get after that. But
for sure,
you got to have something you could pace yourself with.
And then what's in the giant big gulp sitting next to you?
Man.
Because now the movie theaters have the like Coca-Cola factory
it has
dispensers that you
70
can do
flavors.
Oh, it's more than that. It's more than that. Because you can do flavored anything. So I get like Coke Zero now because I don't really drink pop like I used to.
Sure.
But when I'm in a movie theater, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'll drink some Coke. But Diet Coke isn't really great for me, and I'm not gonna drink a 32-ounce Coca-Cola heavy,
a full sugar. So, dude, I think there's a certain point that you reach in your life where you either commit to full sugar soda for the rest of your life, or you go the other way. So I do have I'm strong on your side that if you're drinking a diet something rather than a zero sugar something, your taste buds have something severely wrong with them
Yeah, I
because
like the zero sugar ones more. They're
yeah,
still artificial, but
it's way more palatable.
but then of course the cherry version of that.
Of course. So I would say vanilla. So I'd say
Okay.
vanilla Coke
You can do both.
Zero.
You can do cherry vanilla, Todd.
It's insane. I mean, Wendy's introduced me like the world of that to me. I don't know, 8 years ago, and I walked into a Wendy's and I grabbed a thing and I was like, "What's this? What's this machine?" They're like, "Oh,
What's
this
this
is
spaceship doing over here in the
it's
corner?
an express machine. You can do any flavor variations that you want." I was like, well, what do you need? And then you could get cherry vanilla Coke or cherry. At that point in time, there was no zero sugar; it was just Diet Coke.
Diet,
So I had
yeah.
I had to go the cherry vanilla Diet Coke, and it changed my life. And I seek them out sometimes. It's a shame that Pepsi hasn't caught that wave in restaurants like
Yeah.
Coca-Cola has, because I mean, I would try every flavor of a zero sugar Mountain Dew that you could throw at me. I'm
Now,
here for it.
as somebody similar in age with me, so like because we were talking about like sneaking food into the movie theater. Remember when cargo shorts were fucking popular? What a farce
Dude.
that was that we got rid of those. So convenient.
Cargo shorts, jeans that you cut the bottom of. I mean,
I'm talking about the literal just storage though.
Monster
and they're inherently bulky, whether they're full or not.
That's true.
So like it's hard, like the ocular pat down. I'm going to McDonald's before the movies and just sticking freaking McDoubles in my cargo shorts. Like that was my go-to. That was a pro move. But another thing from like a childhood perspective. So as obviously the other side of the coin at the movies right now is the Barbie movie. So we're going to see that Friday.
Okay.
But you want to know how we're seeing it? Or via drive-in. We're going to the drive-in.
Ooh. I like it.
And they do the double.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Never been to a drive-in movie theater.
So that's what I was going to ask if you ever have. It's it's cool, but it's not like, what's really cool about the Barbenheimer thing is it has made going to the like movies cool again without it being, and no offense to the people that are big fans of them, but like a superhero movie or like kind of like original IP almost. And I know Barbie obviously has, it's been a toy forever, but it's not like it was a comic book or even just a book in general.
Yeah,
like
it's a toy and a cartoon. That's it.
Which is why I've always been a huge fan of Christopher Nolan, because like movies like Interstellar, Inception, Oppenheimer. Now, of course, Oppenheimer and of course has source material to it, or Dunkirk. Like, of course it does. But like movies like Inception or Interstellar, stuff like that is just like, when was the last time you've seen just like original, screenplays as opposed to like, this book was popular, let's make it a movie.
It's true. It's been a long time. And I think that there's something to be said too about the Marvel Cinematic Universe almost ruining the theater experience, because there was nothing when you went for a long time. It felt like that was the only option that you had when you went to the movies. Right. You had to go see a Marvel movie. You had to go see you had to see some sort of competing movie to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And again, that's one of the big reasons why I just didn't go to movies. And I can, and obviously streaming services have changed the way you ingest movies and TV shows and stuff. But like, I don't need to go see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in the theater because it's on Disney.
Watch it at home if you want. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it's been a long time too for me where there's a movie that's come out and I'm like, I need to go. And it's Oppenheimer.
That's an appointment. Yeah.
Yes. Like, I got to go see this in theater. I need to experience this movie in this way, or I feel like I'm selling myself short. It's been a very long time for that.
I feel that. And, obviously without giving anything away, and I kind of like just the tangent we've gone here because I love movies, but it's interesting that we're talking about like the, like the superhero cinematic universes, because there's the character of Oppenheimer. And of course, this isn't giving anything away because he's a he's a real person, obviously was in charge of, the advent of the atomic bomb and that type of study in America, but, had this struggle of, the difference between the scientist of doing all of this work for the development of science or for the, worsement of mankind. And there was this theory going around that I didn't come up with myself, but Christopher Nolan kind of putting himself in there from a movie, because he's a movie historian
Right.
of how what he did everything with the Batman movies previously before this gigantic, boom of now all movies are superhero movies and things like that. And I just thought it was an interesting wrinkle having seen it. So
Yeah. Well, and Christopher Nolan too is built like an old school director too. He doesn't really buy into the new age of, chopping and cutting up a movie and directing and producing a movie. He's, I listened to an interview Cillian Murphy did, and he's behind the camera. He's in the moment of the movie, right? I think that's the big thing where from what Cillian Murphy said from other movies and TV shows that he's done, is that, directors kind of remove themselves from being in the moment of creating the film and just kind of roll it back and then make the, kind of back and forth cuts and adjustments. Whereas Christopher Nolan just exists in the moment of the movie kind of unfolding and the scene unfolding. And it's real, like, organic changes that he makes, or it's real time things that he makes adjustments to. And Cillian Murphy said that that's what makes all of his movies so great, is that he's not waiting to make something better. He's living in the moment. So he feels the movie as it's being created. And I think that's, you could say that for anything, right? Like the way that we ingest media or news or whatever now is 30-second clips, right? It's 30 to 60 seconds of media. And then we move on to the next thing. And then it's 30, 60 seconds of that. Whereas when's the last time you sat down and watched, I don't know, an episode of Dateline or an episode, or something like that. That's not local news.
That was back when I wasn't in charge of the remote and I was a child.
Yeah.
Because I was like, turn this off. I want to watch something else.
Change it to sports.
Yeah. And there weren't 7 TVs in the house. So,
right. That's right. That's right. No, you're right. But I think that's the, even the way that, like, you take in news, like, everything is a choice now of how you take in your news. Whereas it used to be, if you wanted to be up to date on national news, you had to wait until that moment and spend that moment together or with that person, whomever is hosting the show. It's complete. I just, obviously I'm going off on a tangent here, but I just, the ingestion of film, of media as a whole has changed so much, even in the last 5 years, that I kind of find myself now kind of trying to get back to the older way that I used to ingest my information, and not just scrolling through TikTok or something and taking blips and taking it out that way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, dude, I used to get like Sports Illustrated delivered to the house, or like,
we had ESPN magazines at the house
ESPN magazine
every month for, I don't know, 18 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a whole different world. But I guess we're here for sports, right? We're here to talk a little sports. We're here to do a little
partially. Yeah.
A little conversation. I think the easiest thing that we can kind of talk about and go through is what the fuck is going on in Indianapolis?
I think Jim Irsay is back on the wagon.
So I have Jim White as Snow Irsay up here. That's a reference to Jim's life as a whole.
Yeah.
So I went through the timeline of what is to be the Jonathan Taylor and Colts situation. And for anybody that's watching or listening that isn't up to date on this. So July 24th, the Colts put Jonathan Taylor on the PUP list.
Yep.
So in this timeline, running backs are already having the conversation of, we're the most underpaid position in the league.
Where do you stand on that, by the way, before we go further?
I think it's a great question, because I was going to ask you the same question before we got into it. I was trying to put together like a good, thoughtful answer, because I want to stand on one side of this. It's such a short-term role in the league, and you have such a short window to make a large impact, that I think that if you're salary capping, if you're franchise tagging them, I think that it is right for them to be at the bottom tier of a salary cap. I do, because look at there's maybe 5 running backs in the league right now that are true. They get in the game and they make a real legitimate impact on what direction the game goes in.
And everyone always makes the argument of like, who's the last running back to help a team win a Super Bowl?
Sure.
You just don't really see that as a. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying teams that have good running backs are better off without that player. I think that would be naive, but
and it's the evolution of the sport too, right? Like, it wasn't that long ago either that middle linebackers were the most feared players on the field.
Sure.
Right? Ray Lewis was the most feared player on the field for over a decade. A middle linebacker is supplemental. Obviously they're getting a ton of tackles every single game because they're involved in so many plays, but they're not the centerpiece of the defense anymore. It's an edge rusher.
Yeah.
Right. And you look at the other side of the ball and it's very, very similar, right? The centerpiece outside of the quarterback and your offense now is a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Right. The Bengals don't go to back-to-back AFC championships handing off the ball 35 times a game. They don't. Right. They go back-to-back by throwing the ball 50 times, and 35 of those 50 times are split between 3 people.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it, when you have, the running game really is only going to go as far as the offensive line can carry you, is what it seems like, because there have been situations where the offensive line gets injured and quote unquote great running backs just aren't the same because, of course, you have second, third string guys, protecting in front of them. So from a team building perspective, from a team building perspective, what am I going to invest more money in, the wall or the person behind it? And the person behind it is a lot more interchangeable than the elite guys. So, you're talking about the centerpieces on defense being the defensive end. The other kind of player that can be the centerpiece there is like the cornerback. And I liken that to, now switching it over to offense, is obviously the wide receivers, but the left tackle or, like the offensive line as a whole typically is going to be where that secondary money on the offense is going to come in. Of course we know outside of quarterback, but receiver, and teams are willing to invest in the offensive line, not only because of how important they are for the running back and protecting the ultimate asset in the quarterback, but it's from a longevity standpoint. Is we have seen, the Iron Men players of the NFL oftentimes end up being offensive linemen, so it's a much safer bet.
Yeah, Corey, thanks for liking the stream. Yeah, dude. Right, we'll look at the contracts that left tackles have gotten over the last 3 years, right? I think that's what I think of the last 3 years, and you're right. Teams are investing. So to me, it goes your offensive specialist, right, is your wide receiver now, and then it's left tackle. Again, excluding quarterback. Quarterback is
obviously
that's always going to be the top dog on offense, but your left tackle now has become your anchor, because they have to be big, fast, strong, athletic, light on their feet, being willing to adjust to any scheme change, because edge rushers have turned into 6'5", 275, Myles Garrett, the Bosa brothers, like that's what they have to go up against 55 to 65 snaps a game now. Right. So you're investing the money into what protects your most valuable asset, and that being the quarterback.
Yeah, I think part of it. So I'm somewhere in the, I guess go back to the original point at hand is, and not to just be a cop out or a politician about it, but like I am somewhere in the middle, because there is part of me that, like I was just mentioning, from a team building standpoint, and frankly, the dollars only go where it makes sense, and that's quarterback, defensive end, cornerback, left tackle. Guards in certain situations.
Sure. Look at Ryan Lindstrom's contract.
Right. Insane. And it certainly just, again, it depends on the scheme and depends on the situation. And, for running backs, though, I think part of it is we still have this old school view of football, where even just take like fantasy football, for instance, like running backs are always going to be relevant for that, because, they get a lot of stats, they get a lot of touchdowns. They are a part of the game, but we are now able to spread the love a lot more, where, you're right, there's like 4 or 5 like bell cow type guys. My problem on the other side of it is when you do, and this was the point I was making with Corey last week, is I'm all for letting the free market decide. If the free market decides that running backs aren't as valuable, then
Brian, thanks for
so
liking the
saith
stream.
the free market. The problem with that is it's not a free market, because when these guys are at their best and at their, best earning potential, they're rookie capped. A free
Yep.
market would decide what they're worth out of college in the same way that, the reason this, rule basically exists is the Rams gave Sam Bradford a boatload of money. And
Yes.
they're like, what are we doing? Let's just
Yep.
cut it off there. And why would the Players Association, have any fault with that? Because, essentially that's affecting college kids who they're not representing,
Right.
are, but they're not.
Right.
So that's why I kind of land in the middle, because they should have the opportunity. Or, Antonio Gibson was being interviewed today by Kay Adams, and he switched from from receiver to running back in college. And she asked him, like, would you do that now? And he's like, no. And I think that's going to be a thing you see a lot.
Well, I think it's already happening.
Be a demotion.
Right? Yeah, I think it's already happening when you look at high school football and the way high school football has even changed. I mean, to look at something that I've followed through the course of being a sports fan is like going through rivals, right? And looking at the 5-star, the 4-star, the 3-star, and the tiers of athletes, right? And you look at the top 100 in the nation, there's not a lot of running backs on this list anymore. There's not. It's very, very limited on who rival deems the best high school football players in the country are touching the ball 40 times a game as a running back. And there's a ton of those young athletes out there playing football that are running for 150 to 250 yards a game. And they go to, you say they end up at a Power 5 school, right? Like in Alabama, LSU, et cetera, and they're waiting 2 to 3 years to get that time, right? They're waiting 2 to 3 years to get that 1 year on the field that gets them to the league. But who in that offense is getting beat up in practice 3 to 4 days a week leading up to the week of, right? When you're running scout offense, it's that second or third string running back that's running the ball in practice and getting hit too. So I think there's something to that too, where the love goes to who makes the biggest highlight reels. And right now, the biggest highlight reels in high school football come from the multi-dimensional wide receiver. And I mean the one that also plays cornerback or safety, returns kicks and punts, et cetera, et cetera. That's the sexiest thing that you could be in high school football right now, besides an edge rusher, linebacker, big tackler, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
And it's there. I think that parents are starting to get their kids in that direction sooner, right? Because of helicopter parents, AAU dads becoming a real legitimate thing in the world that are, using their kids for clout on social media, or, putting them at camps when they're 8 and 9 years old and 7 days a week of lessons. They're pushing, you're going to be a wide receiver, right? Or you're going to be a quarterback, or you're going to be an edge rusher if they have, the size, or you're going to be an offensive lineman.
Well, imagine that same parent, like, no son of mine's going to be a running back.
That's what I'm saying. They're pushing that. They're pushing that to their kids now. It's like, I've seen enough of parents saying, well, I don't want my kid getting hit 30 times a game. I'd rather them run 18 to 20 routes a game and get the ball 5 to 7 times, or, have 2 or 3 interceptions. Because it used to be, when you and I were in high school, if you went to a smaller high school, the running back was probably also an inside linebacker, right? Because they're the biggest, fastest player that touches the ball. So that means they're the biggest, fastest person on defense as well, more than likely. So that's changing. That evolution has changed so much at a younger age that it's kind of, they're fitting kids to follow that agenda into the NFL, especially as you get into and college now with NIL money. There's not a lot of running backs in college football that are the face of their team. No. There's not. Bijan Robinson could be one of the best running backs drafted since Derrick Henry. And really, he didn't get a ton of publicity as a running back until after the season was over, into combines and once mock drafts started getting him higher and higher and higher and higher, right? You didn't hear about Bijan a ton. You saw him in highlights. You only heard about Quinn Ewers. And you heard about Arch Manning going to Texas more than you heard about Bijan.
Yeah, and he's not even a college kid yet. Right.
No, and that, so I think my point being is that media plays a big factor into where the money goes as well. because if a team goes out and says, let's look at, and maybe this isn't a great example because he's fizzled out now, he's gone, but like look at the contract that the Cowboys gave Zeke. When they gave that contract to Zeke initially, Cowboys fans were like, this is great. Our running back in the future. He's going to carry the load on offense. He's going to make
it's like a top 4 pick, right? I think it was the 4th pick.
Yeah.
Or 5 or something.
Yeah. We've said it on this podcast before. What a mistake to pay a running back that much money, because the game has changed that much, even in the last 5 years, that the running back it's not your centerpiece. It's your foundation to get to 2nd and 4. That's what a running back is to me now. That's it.
Yeah, but there should be always enough in the draft that you can kind of just keep cycling them through on rookie contracts. Essentially, there will be the rare few that stand out and deserve. Like, of course, I'm biased here, but I think of somebody like Nick Chubb for Cleveland, where that made all the sense in the world, and it's still like that. And it wasn't like they broke the bank to give him a ton of money, and it still makes sense for the amount of money they're giving him, because he doesn't seem like a guy, and I know he was all a part, I know he was a part of like the Zoom meetings or whatever. I can't imagine his voice lit up or like he spoke at all. I'm sure he was glad to, help or be involved, but knowing Nick Chubb being the very silent person that he is, and the Browns have also done a good job of where they're like, they could have just been like, we're going to run you 26 times a game because that would be great. But they're like, no, we're going to bring in like a Kareem Hunt, split your workload, allow you to really stay fresh in the 4th quarter. So that way you're running at full speed while the defense is running at 70%, stuff like that. So I think the medicine for all of this is going to be the like Deebo Samuel type, maybe even like, really it kind of starts with like a Curtis Samuel type, but like
Carl,
I think these running backs are going to turn into like gadget guys, if that makes sense, where it's like they'll line up in the
Cordero Patterson.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I like for Deebo Samuel, it made sense why he wanted to sit out last year, because he's like, I am a wide receiver and you are running me through the gauntlet like a running back. So I'm not going to let you put all these hits on my body until you pay me now.
For sure.
And I think that's going to be the type of player you see that is going to be the like elite running back, even though it's more of like a hybrid type player.
Yeah. No, I think you look at most NFL offenses, right? It's single back or empty backfield the majority of the time, right? And that's again the evolution of football has changed so much that you don't really need a long time there weren't a lot of teams that didn't have a fullback, right? The fullback was always that was your anchor in the backfield.
Mike Allstott.
Right. The Mike Allstott, Lorenzo Neals, those kind of guys, like those guys that you saw on the field all the time, even getting touches. And in the last 10 years, and I think Chris Cooley was kind of the centerpiece of this, or the Dallas Clark, for example, where the fullback became like an H-back, or like, they call him like the halfback position, where, yeah, I'll line you up in the backfield, but you catch better than you block. So let's put you in motion and get you out in the center field.
Well, the H-back traditionally is like kind of like the third tight end that lines up behind. Yeah, right.
That's what I'm saying. So fullback to H-back to
what Tim Tebow should have done.
Yeah, exactly. The perfect position for Tim Tebow if he wasn't such a pussy. But now you look at the way that teams build their offense, and that H-back or that third tight end role, they line up in the backfield maybe just on the goal line, first play of the game, whatever it may be. And so you're that alone. So the way that you're building your offense alone tells me that the running back's not as important, because the fullbacks, their only priority is to protect the running back, right? And those circumstances, they're out there to make sure that, Lorenzo Neal made sure that LaDainian Tomlinson's uniform was clean after every game. That was his job. He said that was his job. And same with Brian Ricard with, God, I can't remember his name, the running back from the Ravens.
Jamal Lewis.
Thank you. That was their job. They just made sure that their running back's jersey was clean. teams don't care about clean jerseys on running backs anymore. They expect it to be in the backfield and block more often than not now in a shotgun formation or in a single back formation, or they're a fifth option. So teams and offensive coordinators and head coaches have dictated that the running back isn't as valuable as the wide receiver based on the style of offense that they run.
Well, it's just
Like
the
that,
style of offense that everybody run. I mean, like
right.
the running games, the time that the running game is the most important is when you're nursing a lead, which is typically because you had aired it out previously in the game.
Right. Because your quarterback
like, we got to kill some clock, and so we got to
right.
kill you, buddy. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just think that, again, a lot of this to me just media kind of controls the way that teams do things in a lot of ways, and media has changed the way that teams set up their offense, and the evolution of the game just says that the running back position is the least valued offensive specialist position. So I'm not paying a running back $25 million a year. And if you want to, you as a franchise still have that option to make that decision at the end of the day, right? The Titans made the decision to pay Derrick Henry $20 million plus a year. The Cowboys made the decision to pay Zeke that money. Jim Irsay and the Colts could make that decision.
You're just not going to see the $60 million guaranteed contracts because it's, running backs are effective until they're not.
Right.
Even when a receiver loses a step or so, it's not as dramatic of a fall off of a cliff. So for like what the Giants just did with Saquon Barkley, they basically gave him a little bit of a pinch over the salary cap, the franchise tag number he was going to get. Yeah. But a 1 year all guaranteed money deal, like I could see that being the norm for good running backs. So like Nick Chubb's contract's up at the end of this year. Barring anything catastrophic in what would happen to him this year, I imagine the Browns would want to bring him back. But again, the same thing where it's like, I don't think they're giving him, 40 over 3.
Nope. 1 year. If you stay healthy, we'll do
1 year, 12. Take it. Let's run it back.
Well, and it's it's the same thing with tight ends, right? Like tight ends aren't getting paid 30 plus a year or 25
Some
plus
are.
a year. Right. Travis Kelce is, right? Darren Waller is, because they are
Mark Andrews, Kittle, right. Hawkinson. Like there are, Njoku got paid.
Right. But again, it's a franchise's decision to invest that money, because a tight end is in the same boat where you're almost guaranteeing that they're missing 2 to 4 games a year because of the amount of times they get beat up on, right? Like, Baltimore's paying Mark Andrews that kind of money, and he played 10 games last year. He might have only played 9 games last year.
Yeah, but at a certain point, you have to acknowledge the fact that it's just a brutal game. Like anybody can get injured at any moment at any time.
Yeah, but I think I'm looking at because anytime you're investing money into something or something, it's all risk assessment, right? What's my ROI? Where do I get where's my dividends come in? And then how do I protect myself? Right. Somebody that runs over the middle 20 times a game, I'm not investing as much money in them as someone who's going to beat somebody on the corner.
Sure.
I'm not going to pay a guy that runs up the middle 16 to 20 times a game as much as someone that's running, 15 post routes a game. You just don't. You protect that. You pay your assets that are the most protected. So that's kind of where I stand on it. Like, look, at the end of the day, my stance on this is, if a franchise wants to pay a player, they have the ability to do so. But it's just like with anytime you give a quarterback a big contract, like you're just taking money away from somewhere else, right? You're taking that money away, and maybe you're removing some of that money from your secondary on the other side of the ball, or maybe you don't get to get a top 10 left tackle in free agency, or re-sign that left tackle that you drafted 4 years ago in the second round.
Yeah.
But that's business, right? Every business has people or things that they miss out on because they just can't afford it in the moment, or the cards don't, the deck doesn't, fall into your favor. So
there aren't a ton of businesses that are like, all right, but for 5 years, you can only pay this guy this much money. and you can work them 18 hours a day. That's fine. Burn them out. That's my problem with it, is it's like crazily making drastic changes to laws for people that are like under the age of 18 because they don't have a seat at the table. You know what I mean? Like if you
Sure.
can't vote, it's like you don't really have a voice in that regard. So my only issue with it, and I trust me, I'm probably 70-30 on the side of, hey, the free market is deciding that the running backs, are just not as valuable. My only gripe with it is it's frankly, it's not really a free market.
Okay. I get it. I get where
Yeah.
you're coming from. All right. Well, all this kind of circles back around to the situation in Indianapolis that we're dealing with. So Jonathan Taylor's put on the PUP list about a week ago, 8 days ago.
Real quick, hilarious name for. I know it's physically unable to perform, but every time I hear the PUP list, I'm like, oh, that's cute.
That's cute. Little PUP list. So then Jonathan Taylor's agent, right? And some JT too. I don't want to say that he doesn't have skin in this game, but JT's agent is the one that's tweeting and saying like he needs to be paid. He needs to be taken care of. We're not going to agree on this contract thing because that's been kind of the dispute between Jonathan Taylor and Jim Irsay and the Colts kind of over as the season has entered in, as he wants a contract extension. He has the most yards per game of any running back of the last 3 years. So he's using that as leverage and saying, hey, you should pay me. And then Jim Irsay tweets a message. Basically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the way that I interpreted his message is nobody's going to strong arm me into any money. At least not a running back.
Yeah. And the irony is, and this certainly isn't my original idea, I've seen this floating out there, is Andrew Luck retires and Jim Irsay's like, keep the money.
$26 million.
It's like, all right. I just think Jim Irsay's I don't know. You know what though? He owns a franchise though. He gets to make those calls.
Absolutely. So that's kind of what I want to lead into this. So now it's, Jonathan Taylor has this back issue on his physical. They're going to put him on the DFI list, which means they don't have to pay him. Yada 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 yada. Fast forward to Monday. Zach Moss breaks his forearm.
Yeah.
So now you're down to a running back that Dane Jackson or Dean Jackson. He subbed in for JT last year. A 5th round pick that they drafted this past year, and then a running back that they just signed from the University of Indianapolis that did the Colts combine. That's it. Those are your 3. So you went from Jonathan Taylor,
sure,
the person that carried your offense 2 years ago, to a platoon. And I think that, the way that I look at it is, yeah, you're subbing 3 for 1 when you have a guy like Jonathan Taylor on offense, right? It's just like anything. When Jamar Chase, a top tier, an S tier wide receiver gets hurt, it's not like the number 2 wide receiver steps up and puts up the same exact numbers. Now they get more targets, but it's not nearly the same level of athlete. But I guess the way that I look at this, and I look at what is happening in Indianapolis as a whole, is a lot of people are just sticking their foot so far in their mouth, and it just keeps coming out shit. That's what I feel like. Indianapolis just has this big shit cloud over him right now, where Jonathan Taylor's going to sit out. Okay, well, if you're going to sit out, you have a bad back on your physical, so we're not going to pay you. So, and I get his agent trying to speak upon, or at least be his advocate, right? Because that's their job. At the end of the day, an agent's trying to get you the most money that they can, so they can also make the most money that they can.
No, it's because they care, Todd. I'm just kidding.
So my question to you is, say you're sitting in Jonathan Taylor's seat.
Okay.
What's your reaction to your agent making these very bold and brass statements upon your behalf before you can even defend yourself?
I mean, I assume that the agent is speaking on behalf of the client, quite frankly. otherwise he probably wouldn't still be his agent.
Right.
It's not like Jonathan Taylor wouldn't have plenty of suitors should he believe that the guy behind the wheel isn't, deserving or good enough for the job to do so. So to me, that kind of speaks to the fact that I think he's parroting what his client is feeling, quite frankly.
Sure.
And I understand. I like we kind of just hashed it out there for 20 minutes. I think I understand the frustration of the running backs entirely, and frankly, I do believe that it is just. But at the same time, like you were just mentioning, all these running backs, or what the Colts are looking at right now, without Taylor and Moss, Dalvin Cook's still out there, Zeke's still out there. Like if you
Kareem
Fournette's
Hunt's
still out there, Kareem Hunt's still out there. Like you look at the free agent list, and it's like, most all these guys are under 29. And I don't know. I think what you're going to see out of the running back position is a lot of guys. If I'm Jonathan Taylor, why not just show up and just say you have a hamstring every week? They have to pay you.
Yep.
There's nobody that can tell you you're not hurt. Now, I understand what that might look like in the locker room, and there's that piece of it, but I don't know, man. I want to know what side it's interesting to hear us always talking about the running backs or the owners or the market or the media. I want to know about the other 52 guys.
Sure.
I really, really want to know the opinion of the third string cornerback who objectively has a less impact on the game, but is making more money.
Right.
I think that would be the cure. Like, I don't think anyone's going at that angle yet. And I would love to see, you talk about like sports media. I would love to see them ask those questions to the other people on the roster to get their view on it, because those are their teammates. And is it, hey, we got a job to do here? Or is it, hey, we have a finite amount of time in this league, and I think you should try to get everything that you can.
Right.
Because I think fans always want the players to be like, oh, if I was a player, I'd run through a fucking wall. And you're like, you're an idiot. No, you wouldn't.
Sure. And I think that I think that the response in the locker room to that, I think there's kind of like a brothers in solitude, or kind of like it's the pact mentality that when you see your boy kind of go down and get treated the wrong way, if you have good enough leadership within the locker room, they're directing the team like, hey, shut your fucking mouth. Don't say anything. Somebody's going to come up to you and ask you questions, and you just need to say that you're here to earn a spot on the roster, or you're here to earn a starting spot on defense or whatever. But I do agree with you. I think that if you could get some anonymity from 10 players on that roster, that you guarantee that their name is never going to come out, but you just say, hey, these are 10 players that are making more money than this guy is on the roster that don't start, and you get their opinions. I assume that overwhelmingly they're going to side with their teammates and say, like, yeah, man, get paid, get your money, because
you're probably right.
Because your career, so a running back specifically, or any athlete really, you're defined by a small series of moments, right? So Jonathan Taylor is trying to create multi-generational wealth from what he's done in the league for really 1.5 years, 2.5 years, really, because he was injured most of last season. So he's taking the small moments to create his future, right? And you could say the same for any player, right? Look at Justin Herbert's contract that he just received. It's small moments of the game, but it turns into an overall performance contract. But it's a lot harder for a running back to put that together, because you could have 200 yards one game, and the next game you go out and roll, a 40 ball, right? Just that's the way football works for a running back. Whereas with a quarterback, that you get there for 350 yards a game, but you could have 2 touchdowns and no picks, or you can have 2 touchdowns and 4 picks, and the result is likely pretty close to the same of what you're going to get paid at the end of the day. But
yeah,
I think that, I don't know, man. I think that the way that a locker room, and this is all my perspective of listening to athletes. So I listen to Bussin' with the Boys a lot. So it's Will Compton, Taylor Lewan. They interview a lot of current, former professional football players. They've interviewed Vrabel. And I listened to a very early on podcast that they did with Delaney Walker because they're all in the Titans together at this time. And Delaney Walker kind of alludes to the point where he was like, I will always try to get, at the end of the day, I want to make the most money that I can while I get to do this thing, because I am in a very small percentage of people that are going to get to play the sport at this level. I want every single person that I play with to make the most money that they can and to establish the most moments that they can to make that money. So I think that that's kind of the pulse of the locker room. They would never come out and be like, oh yeah, I want Jonathan Taylor to make $30 million a year. But behind closed doors, they're all saying like, hey, we need to pay this guy. Because at the end of the day, if you're not paying him and he doesn't play, guess what? The Colts are not going to win.
Yeah, but if I'm the Colts, I'm kind of looking at it too. Like, I don't think we're going to anyway. So do you really want to spend big money on a running back when you're
not going to win, you mean?
Yeah. Like you're kind of like, and we've said that too, like it would be much different if, and I feel like this has changed in the last 10 years where it's, running backs aren't like, the last one I can think of that really like carried his team was like Adrian Peterson, right? Like the last MVP from the running back position. You don't see it in the Super Bowl MVPs. You don't see it in, again, like we said before, like teams that win the Super Bowl, nobody's like, they got here on the back of their running back. It just,
right.
It just doesn't happen that way. And like we said before, like the job is so much dependent on the five guys in front of you doing their job for you to even have the opportunity to do your job, that I think when, you had such a more analytical approach, like to me, that was the big turning stone in this whole thing, was the influx of analytics in football, which, take it for what you want or, discount it for what you want. I don't really care. But what it's telling these GMs and these team builders is this position is replaceable. And the people that protect them, not only are they protecting our biggest asset, but one of the biggest qualities in offensive line play is how much they gel together. Therefore, how much you keep them together. So you kind of have to pay them as a unit. Or, like you said, the left tackle is obviously going to be the sexiest of the five, but we've always said, your offensive line is only as good as your worst guy. Now you can take somebody who is average, above average, maybe behind an elite offensive line, and they can still get you 4 yards of carry.
It's all about being able to get to 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 5.
Right.
That's a running back's job.
Right. Like we said, the time where the running back, it comes, into play the most in the biggest parts of the game is when you're protecting a lead. Yeah.
Garbage time. So you bring up a good point. So maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Who is the last running back to win Super Bowl MVP?
Probably. Did James White didn't win it, did he?
Nope. It is not in this century.
Okay. So it would probably be like, I don't know, like Terrell Davis.
It is Terrell Davis.
Let's go.
That's a good solid to get there. So in that time, there's been 4 linebackers to win Super Bowl MVP. There's been a
couple wide receivers, I'd imagine.
Yeah, several wide receivers.
Of course,
quarterbacks, and 1 safety, right? Dexter Jackson with the Bucks.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But
didn't Barber win it? But I guess that's probably not the.
No, that was Eli Manning won it.
Oh no, I'm sorry. When the Buccaneers won, when they beat the Raiders or whatever, that would have been like 2000. Like
that was Dexter Jackson. That's 2003.
Oh, it was Jackson. Why did I think it was? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Dexter Jackson. But even before that, so in the history of the Super Bowl, there have been 7 running backs that have won Super Bowl MVP, right? Super Bowl MVP is technically supposed to be the reason that you win the game. So that's kind of, I guess that's a small sample size, right? That's one game. And I'm not talking about the course of the year because obviously there's been franchise, like Jamal Anderson gets the Falcons to the Super Bowl, right? Like there's guys that help you get there when you're on the franchise. But again, it's such a small window that you just can't justify paying them above the market money.
Right.
But I say that, but there's a big but here. But there is a much more tactful and professional way to go about how you're handling these things than to find a loophole to not pay somebody.
Right.
Right.
No, I get it.
So that's where, Corey says this, I try my best not to agree with him on things, but I will side with the millionaire over the billionaire 100 times out of 100. Right. I will always feel that way. So I support Jonathan Taylor trying to make as much money as he can. I do not support Jim Irsay digging this, 15-foot grave for himself and making himself kind of look like the jackass of the NFL. And those are big shoes to fill because there's a lot of guys in the history of the NFL that have worn the jackass sneakers.
Yeah, but Dan Snyder's out, so.
Right. Yeah, he's gone. Right. Jerry Jones isn't as vocal as he once was, so we don't have to listen to that as much anymore. But I guess, you said it too. Like, look at the running back free agent market. If I'm a running back, do I even want to go there? Do I want to play with the Colts?
I mean, there's only 32 people that are hiring.
Right. So you're trying.
It depends on how valuable, like for someone like Zeke, like he's made his money. So really, it's how important is football at this point.
Sure, and I think
he's not getting signed for more than like $3 million.
No, so I think of like Kareem Hunt, for example, because Kareem Hunt's never gotten the big contract.
No.
So, yeah, he is somebody to me where I'm like, all right, well, if you want to play football, you kind of have to bite the bullet. If they come knocking on your door, like, yeah, the owner's an asshole, but you could basically say that for every franchise
They're all
in every professional sport. They're all. I don't think there's too many billionaires that got to where they are by being the nicest guy in the room. Right? Let's just call it what it is. But yeah, I think you look at the free agent market too of running backs, and that's kind of where I was getting to is that there's really Kareem Hunt is the only running back to me that makes sense that would be like, all right, well, I'll go do this thing for $3 or $4 million because even Dalvin Cook's kind of made his money. He's still getting paid by the Vikings this year.
Yeah, and it seems like he'll probably end up with the Jets, and
right.
For Zeke, I really don't know
because he spent the weekend in New England. So
yeah, but again, it's also one of those things where it's like bring on week 5 when there's a weird string of injuries and a contender comes calling, and now your value is much higher than it is today.
Right. So that's kind of how the dominoes are for me. Like, if I'm a running back, if I'm one of these veteran running backs that have already kind of established their money in the league,
stay in shape.
Say, hey, I'm good for right now. I'll stay on the market, right? Pay me. I would. You just throw out a big number. All right, if you want me, I'm worth $7 million this year. Okay, we're not paying you that. All right, well, I'll just stay on the market.
Right.
And then when a Miami, for example, when Raheem Mostert ultimately gets injured again, or Jeff Wilson Jr. gets injured again, I mean, they're a real contender in the AFC, right? So then you're just available. A guy like Fournette is just hanging out, waiting to get the week 6 through 18 contract. So
right.
I think if I'm them, I just stay patient, just ride it out, stay in really good shape, take your time, and don't force yourself into a bad spot.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
Yeah. So we're obviously we've talked a lot about Jonathan Taylor. We've talked about the running back position as a whole, but I want to talk about the Colts. So you've already said it. They're probably not going to win a ton of games this year, right? So new head coach, likely a rookie quarterback starting this year. It looks like Anthony Richardson's he's taken most of the
he will be snaps. For sure. That's the entire gauge of the season is what do we have in QB1.
So if you're Indianapolis, what stops you from just being okay with being 3-14 and getting a top 3 pick?
Nothing. I mean, the players, it's the NFL, and that's the thing is like tanking in other sports, I think works well. In the NFL, you have guys who are trying to just stay on a roster. You might have
Right.
teams that are inherently worse than others, and that's could be a design of the team tanking, if you will. But I've never watched a football game and seen anyone not try, unless in like rare cases. But like, yeah, so the Colts might not be great, but they're going to go out there and try to win more games than they should. But even at like the most optimistic view I can give of the Colts, I just don't see them making the playoffs.
As long as Steichen doesn't Lovie Smith their way out of the first overall pick, let her ride.
That was so funny to me. I remember our like last week show. I was like, "Can you believe it? Can you believe it?"
Beautiful. It was a beautiful.
I even like alluded to it like the week before. Like, I just want you guys to know that if the Texans win and the Bears lose,
right. It was the perfect storm. It's the best double bird that you could exit with.
Yeah. Oh,
and they still got picks 2 and 3, so it didn't really matter at the end of the day.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm with you, man. I think that if you are on the Colts roster right now and you're suiting up for 18 weeks, you're just kind of strapping in for a shitstorm. And the likelihood that you win more than 4 games, if I'm in Indianapolis right now, to me seems pretty slim.
Especially when you look at the AFC landscape. Like,
right,
they're all like it seems to me like every team has a case of like, here's the optimistic view of Team X and how they can make the divisional round or the AFC Championship. And I'm like, okay, I can buy that.
And three of the teams I think you are saying are the bottom feeders of the AFC are in the South with
in the South. Yeah, because like the Jaguars, if somebody tapped me on the shoulder right now, I was like, I'm from the future, the Jaguars in the AFC Championship game, I'd be like, wow, that's crazy, but okay.
Right. But you look at the Titans are pretty close to
say the Texans, I'd be like, what?
Yeah. Right. And they're kind of in the same, they're in a similar boat. You're throwing a rookie quarterback out there with a pretty weak wide receiver locker room. You're not going to win. You're not going to go 9-8, more than likely.
Right.
I'm not going to say you're not, because I didn't think Jacksonville was going to make it to the playoffs last year.
They're the team I would say are on a short list of
last year.
What's that?
You alluded to it a lot at the beginning of last year. That was like one of your biggest hot takes.
Yeah, that was my big hot take. I was like, don't sleep on the Jags, man. They're good. They are a good team.
That was your hot take at the beginning of the year, and you got shit on a little bit when they started slow, and you ended up being right.
I felt good about it. I mean, don't let anyone fool you that I didn't take the Colts preseason, but
that's what I was going to say.
I adapted a little quicker.
we all bought into the Colts being.
It wasn't even buying in. It was just like a
process of elimination.
Exactly. That's 100% what it was. It was like, somebody's got to win this fucking thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't think Matt Ryan was, going to be that bad, but
that far
either way. Yeah, I mean, the AFC South is just very not exciting for this year. But again, somebody's going to have to win it. I think the AFC in general is going to be very, very exciting. And Todd, we got actual football coming. We got football is going to be on television tomorrow.
It's back.
I personally, of course, have a little bit more excitement for it because it is my team. And also, huge shout out. Part of the reason that we're in this game, Joe Thomas being elected to the Hall of Fame, who is the first Cleveland Brown since the expansion team to wear that honor. And I can't think of anybody who is more deservedly so of that. Although, of course, the teams that he played on weren't great, which is unfortunate because of how dominant he was at that position.
He was the best tackle in the NFL for a while.
Easily. And it's so funny now watching. Yeah. And now watching the Browns where they've been better since, although still not great, but arguably, not arguably just better teams. like watching the left tackle position, just the greed we watch it with. Like, come on, what are you
Sure.
doing? And it's like,
I'm sure Baltimore felt the same way with Orlando Pace, right? Like
right.
you watch somebody be dominant for such a long time, and then everything after that is chopped liver.
Or Ogden, right? Because Pace was.
Oh yeah, Jonathan
St. Louis.
Ogden.
Yeah.
St. Louis. Yes, Jonathan Ogden. Thank you.
No, but 100%. And I'm excited only for the fact that the Hall of Fame game is one of those games that I always put on because I'm like, oh, football's back. But then, halfway through the first quarter, I'm catching myself not even paying any attention to it at all.
Now.
I'm nodding out, but I'll be watching with a little bit more of a closer eye. But even for it, like there's going to be nothing that we learn tomorrow.
No.
About either team.
No.
But it'll just be cool to see the uniforms and the helmets and the players.
What's the distance from Canton to where you live?
Like 40 minutes.
Okay. I saw that
maybe a little bit longer.
Tickets right now for that game are just over $2,000 if you want to go watch it.
No.
So, because I was like, oh, it can't be that crazy.
Well, part of it is the seat. It's not. It's probably like the Canton High School. Canton McKinley plays at that stadium.
Right. It's
like 10,000 seat. Yeah. Like
it's one of the. I believe it's a top 5 biggest high school football stadium in Ohio.
Right. But it really shouldn't be
capacity.
It shouldn't be a high school stadium. It's just the only way to justify, because that field needs to be NFL ready in order to play that game.
Right.
It has to be up to the NFL standards, even though it's pretty shitty still. But
sure. But yeah, dude, I think it's pretty exciting that we do get to see a little clanging and banging tomorrow.
Are you going to watch?
I am going to watch. Look, at the end of the day, football is football, man. I'm sitting down, to start the year, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then as the season unfolds, I get a little MAC action on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing better. And I'll stand by this until I meet my maker. There's nothing better than watching like Central Michigan and Ball State go after it on a Wednesday night, because at least one team's they're going to score at least 40. One team's going to score at least 40 points.
Yeah, maybe, or no one's going to score more than 14.
Right, but normally that's if like Northern Illinois is playing Buffalo, right? Because I think the MAC hosts a lot of the air raid offense that I enjoy. If I'm watching, as a Miami guy too, like I watched a lot of those MAC schools in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where they were dropping 50 bombs against Miami every Saturday.
Yeah, I don't know. The MAC to me is like, it really is just like poor man's Big Ten, where it's like,
love it, dude.
This is pro style, but like sans pros.
For sure. Well, so you got to think of like in our timeline of like high school into college, we got like Cribbs and Kareem Hunt and
Kareem Hunt was fairly recent, but I give you Harrison was there.
Yeah, Jordan Lynch at Northern Illinois. I don't know if you remember. Yes, I mean Roethlisberger was probably when we were in. I mean,
you're saying like when we were in college? Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack.
That's right, at the University of Buffalo. Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, I would only go to the football games to watch other teams, because I think during my timeline of being at Miami, I think they only had one winning season. They never won the MAC any time that I was there.
Yeah.
So it was good to watch. Gosh, I can't remember his last name. He was on the Bengals his last name was Lefevre. He was a quarterback for Central Michigan for a while.
Michigan. Yeah.
I every year that they played it, 2 of the 4 years that he was there, when they played at Yager Stadium in Oxford, I was there. I went.
Corey Davis.
That's right. He went to. He went to. Did he go to?
He was at Central.
Well?
Yeah.
That's where AB went too.
Yep.
But yeah, I love MAC football. It's the same reason why I watch, like, I'll stay up until 2 a.m. to watch Hawaii play Fresno State.
I won't. I don't love college in the same way, but I get it. Like, I get excited for the big ones, or like that first week, because it's like the week before the NFL starts and the preseason is over. It's always exciting because you're like, ooh, it's like the little appetizer.
Right.
I'm gearing myself up.
And there's usually one good like Power 5 school on the lower level of their conference plays like an Appalachian State or somebody like that, and they give them a run for their money. Right. I'm thinking last year Appalachian State went to I think 3 overtimes with North Carolina at the beginning of the year. And I'm sitting in my living room just fiending for football and watching this game go into triple overtime, just drooling over it. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, if there is anybody who is going to watch the Hall of Fame game tomorrow, might I recommend it as a time to start looking at like your fantasy football stuff? Because like the juices will start to flow. It's okay to not really pay attention, but it's nice to kind of hear the noises and the sounds. And what is it, NBC? So I don't even know who it is, but who broadcasts the game? But you know what I mean? Like hearing like Al Michaels again or whoever it might be. It's like, okay, all right, I'm getting juiced.
Football being
football will be irrelevant.
Football is on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Football being discussed while football on does make you want to like. You probably haven't logged into Yahoo Fantasy or any
check your passwords.
Yeah, make sure you can log in on as you're prepping for draft day. Like I think I'm.
How many leagues you in this year, Todd?
So I was just going to bring that up. I got to cut a league out because your boy didn't hit a lick at all last year. I lost money. So that's the promise I made to Mary 5 years ago because I used to be in 5 leagues. And I was like, that's too much. I lost money. So I'll drop down to 4. And I've been in 4 for this was year 5. This past year was year 5 of being in 4 leagues. And your boy didn't make all his money back. So
Dog's relegating himself.
I got to drop out of one. And here's the thing, that's like breaking up with a girlfriend, right? Because I've already established myself in every league that I'm in. So I gotta cut ties somewhere.
Good for you, man.
It hurts me.
I'm in 2 long-standing ones, and I'll probably just keep it there for a while.
So the benefit. I think
2 is the right number.
Yeah. So the benefit for me is that I removed myself from the dynasty league that I was in 5 years ago. So I'm not in any league where like I'm giving up time and more studying to get the roster to where it's my personal preference. Right.
Right.
So, again, I'm nervous. It's like going into a blind date and telling somebody like, hey, this just isn't for me. I got to tell somebody this year, like, hey, I'm not coming back. And I got to do it soon because it takes a little bit.
You got to give them the chance to fill the spot.
Absolutely. Because if you're in a quality league, which all the fantasy football leagues that I play in right now, I believe that all 10, 12, or 14 individuals that are in the league understand what they're doing when they're playing fantasy football.
Yeah.
Right. And that
makes it more fun.
Yes. And I don't want to put them in a situation where they're throwing somebody in to just, get the money, take money. Right. So that's my goal. I gotta look through it though, because I am in a league so I switched leagues that I was in from people that I used to work with to people that I work with now. But the thing is like, I see this guy 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Fantasy is a good way to kind of stay in touch with people.
Yeah. So I gotta, if I get out of this league, that's probably, I'm not going to.
Well, might I recommend taking a look at it tomorrow during the game? I think by the end of the game, I think you should have a decision.
I'll let you know.
Really just dive.
I like it. I like it. All right. So moving on from football to a little baseball, because we got to talk. If I'm going to be on the podcast, I got to talk a little.
Got to talk some ball.
I got to talk some baseball. So trade deadline ended at 6 p.m. Eastern yesterday. As a Reds fan, it wasn't nearly hot as it was a year ago at this time. Again, our 1-year anniversary, we talked trade deadline for actually the majority of the podcast that we did together for the first time last year.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because the Reds traded Luis Castillo, Tyler Mahle, Tyler Naquin, Tommy Pham, right? Brandon Drury, like there were 5 big names that they disposed of last year at the trade deadline. And this year the Reds had 1 trade. That's it. Traded for a left-handed pitcher in the bullpen, which was a true need because they only have one, and that's it. So I think a lot of Reds fans were kind of underwhelmed because they thought the Reds were going to go after starting pitching to try to contend into October. And if you are following the Reds, you should be thankful that they made no moves to take any starting pitching after, like up to the deadline, because anybody that was available at the trade deadline yesterday, there was no team control.
Right.
They're either a free agent or it's player option. And if you're a small market franchise and you're trying to grab somebody at the trade deadline to contend and move forward, you need at least 2 years of player control, right? Otherwise, you're playing for October. The Reds right now should not be playing for October. The Reds are playing for maybe October of like 2025, but anything you're doing right now is to add value. So they traded for Sam Moll from the Athletics, gave up a top 50 prospect in the Reds organization and Joe Boyle. And they have control of him until 2027. That's a good trade for the Reds, right? So I give them a solid B.
Sure.
You didn't fudge the bucket. You didn't get crazy. You didn't give up. You gave up none of your top.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be giving up any of my prospects right now because you're flashing in a pan this year. You have young, really talented guys. Obviously, everyone knows about Eddie De La Cruz, but what if this team can sneak into the playoffs this year and get some experience? Awesome. But if not, right. I'm not giving up future assets because I believe that you haven't peaked yet.
No, and here's the thing. And
that's when you want to give up those assets at the deadline.
Right. And I've said this before kind of through the year is the Reds are not going to beat the Braves in a series of 7. They just don't have the stuff. So if you're a Reds fan, don't think that them not making any moves takes them away from winning a World Series, because it certainly doesn't. Because 2 of your best starting pitchers are coming back off the injured list in 2 to 3 weeks. So stay put. Enjoy that you're getting to watch 4 of the top 8 prospects that the Reds have had over the last 2 years at Great American or in a Reds uniform for over 100 games, and just have fun with it. Just relax. It's fine. If they win the NL Central, it's the story of the year for baseball because they were projected to be a bottom 3 team.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the story of the year. It's the reason why Ellie De La Cruz had national publicity, because supposedly one of the worst teams sweeps the Astros, takes a series with the Dodgers, takes a series, has an 11-game winning streak. It's all fun and exciting.
Right.
But just be happy that you get to watch it a year sooner than what anybody else thought. And just be happy that they got some depth in the bullpen, and they're about to get more depth back when TJ Antone comes back off of his rehab assignment. So be happy that they stayed put. But I would be remiss if we didn't talk about your Guardians.
Sure. Very made a lot of moves.
They did. So Josh Bell, they said, see you later. I think if you're a Guardians
fine fan, because he had a player option for next year. So
that's right.
Happy to see that.
Good. And you got a top prospect out of that trade.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the Guardians, I think some would call a little lackluster, right? So you trade Rosario for Noah Syndergaard. Noah Syndergaard's having a bad year. Let's call it spade a spade. It's a bad year. But the Guardians got 2 of the top 100 prospects in baseball back.
Right.
So.
And they traded Savale like at basically his peak. Like he's playing great right now, but the guy is oft injured. I believe I saw a stat where it's like he's never. I want to say he's over 100 innings in a year. That might not be right, but
yeah. So I look at what the Guardians did. You get Khalil Watson in a trade. You get Mendoza in the Savale trade from Tampa Bay. You have both Nailers, right? So Bo Nailor's having, this is his first time getting real full-time playing time for an entire season. He's having a fantastic year.
What was it? He's never gone over 125 innings.
Yeah. Oh, Savali.
Yeah, which is not a lot.
Not for a starter. 125 innings is bad. That means he's only started about 20 games.
His ERA always looks good, but right.
Right. So if you're in the you're in the worst division in baseball in the AL Central.
Yes.
So again, the Guardians are in a very oddly similar position that the Reds are, where if you win the AL Central, you probably don't make it out of the American League to the World Series, but you did it with very minimal money and with mostly talent that you've traded for or developed to get to that position. So be thankful you are where you are, right? And again, that's kind of the methodology of a small market franchise. You built the foundation through trades or international signings or drafting or whatever. You get the window to culminate, and you just need to make sure you capitalize on it. I think the Guardians are probably 2 years away from being able, maybe a year away from capitalizing on everything that's coming together. So just be happy that, Josh Bell did exactly what you wanted him to do when you signed him this past offseason. You got
an asset back out of him. That's really,
Yes. So that's, I think the bad thing about being a fan of a team is that you get attached to people. And when they trade those people, you're like, oh, why?
No, the funniest thing is I wanted the Guardians to sell because you have Bieber injured. Like that would have been the big piece that you could have maybe, turned around and got a little more. But, as you saw for this trade deadline, it wasn't like, I felt like it was almost like fair value all around almost. Like, I don't think anyone overspent. And I think there was just this shadow of potentially Ohtani moving, which I never really believed in.
And they shut it down last week.
Right.
The Angels were like, hey, we're not, after he had the shutout, 2 home runs, they're like, hey, we're not trading this guy.
Do you think they should have?
That's such a hard question, dude, because
can you imagine the return you could have gotten on that?
I do. So here's the thing.
What if he walks? How are the Angels so bad with like 2 of the best players in sports?
Because they have 2 of the best players. They have 2
baseball's
of the best players.
Weird, man.
Yes,
baseball's fucking weird.
Baseball's weird. And here's the thing is that the Angels, outside of the 2000s into the early 2010s, they've kind of had this dark cloud where they've had it where their pitching has really all culminated and they've played really, really, really great. Or pitching's been great. They have no offense that they can put together. And then on the flip side, you have the best player in baseball for over a decade, and you can't even put together a winning season because their pitching is so bad that you're giving up 10 runs a game and you're scoring.
Right.
I think that they're also in a division where you had an organization hit a peak that people didn't expect in Houston. Outside of cheating, Houston had
that whole cheating thing.
Yeah. Houston internationally signed and drafted and traded for a team that is better than the Bagwell, Craig Biggio era.
Sure.
They never expected that to happen. So you're in a division where you have Texas and Houston, the Rangers and the Astros, where they have a ton of money, right? They're willing to spend it. George W. Bush is willing to, and Nolan Ryan are willing to spend a ton of money on the Rangers, right? They're the winners of the deadline.
Right.
They got Max Scherzer. They got the best available pitcher at the trade deadline. And they got Aroldis Chapman 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So they win the trade deadline. They should win the AL West. They should be able to, in my opinion, they are the team to beat moving forward in the American League. So if you are the Angels, they've invested so much bad money because you got to remember too, they invested almost $300 million in Albert Pujols before $300 million was a thing in Major League Baseball.
Right.
And they had that contract for 10 years and he was 32 when they signed him.
Yeah, that was wild. But he was like, the level he was playing at.
So my brother and I had this conversation. We were texting back and forth yesterday because let me find the messages because we were just talking about
I think
He, so
Pujols.
he brought
Go ahead.
he brought up sorry. So he brought up Kirby Puckett, right? Just a random thing, and then so we got into the conversation of like, who's a player in sports that you take injuries out that you feel like just never met their true potential. So I said Brandon Roy. I'm a big fan of Brandon Roy. I think that if he doesn't have glass knees, he could be a top 10 to 12 scorer in NBA history.
Okay. Brandon
So
Roy,
then,
I could see that.
So then he brought up Ryan Howard because you remember, I mean,
I remember
you
Ryan
remember
Howard,
2000s Ryan Howard, 50 home runs, 40 plus home runs. So then we talked about Albert Pujols. So I brought up Albert Pujols. I said, go on Baseball Reference, look at Albert Pujols until he signed with the Angels.
Dude, I'm literally doing that right now.
He didn't have less than 30 doubles or 30 home runs.
It's the batting average to me. Like I remember his power.
300,
like, he was a 45,
runs, 30 doubles.
The only time he hit below 300 was the year before he signed with the Angels, and it was 299.
Yep. And he always had 30 home runs and 30 doubles.
Yep.
Always.
Not many people come into the league with 37 home runs in their rookie year.
No.
Like, it's not surprising that he was able to get over the 600 mark because that's so hard to do. But when you're constantly hitting at least 35.
He had a decade where he did it.
Right.
And there were several years in that decade where he was, if not at 40, damn near 40. Right. So you're talking about
3-time MVP. My God.
He's the best player of the 2000s, in my opinion.
Easily. And that was like right. He kind of started to really like ascend when Barry Bonds was descending too. Cause I remember this like changing of the guard, and say whatever you want about Barry Bonds, but to not say he was the most feared batter in the box is just being naive. And then it really turned into Pujols, right?
Yeah. If somebody ever tells you that Barry Bonds wasn't the most feared hitter in baseball, no, there's three options here. The first option is you've never watched baseball before.
Right. Which could be true, which could happen.
Which could happen. Number two is that you're a part of the Baseball Writers of America and you're such a naturalist to the game that you don't want to believe facts. Number three is that you're blind and you choose not to, or your ignorance takes over and you just don't allow to hear facts.
Blind people can listen to the radio, dog.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's why I changed blindness to ignorance. Right. So, but you're right though.
The blind community appreciates you.
Yeah, no problem. I hope they're listening. But Albert Pujols is the best player of the 2000s. And I'm saying that because he played all of the 2000s. And he is the reason. He's one of the big reasons why baseball survived after the Mitchell Report.
Yeah, sure.
Because he was very exciting. And he gets kind of lost in that sauce a little bit because there was so much controversy in baseball at that time that people forget that he literally dominated baseball. And as a Reds fan, I don't forget because he destroyed the Reds through the 2000s. I mean, just him and Jim Edmonds just wrecked the Reds. It's a hole in my heart of going to Great American and watching Albert Pujols and him just. At one game I remember specifically, he hit like a 440-foot home run. And there were so many Cardinals fans there, and they were cheering so loud that I felt the wind come out of my sails when he did it. It's like, oh, that really sucks. But like, in the moment, you're not realizing you're witnessing such a great thing. But like, yeah, he's the best player of the 2000s, in my opinion. I'll take that one. But yeah, trade deadline. Like I said it. I think the chair. I'm rocking a new chair here.
Yeah.
And now it's
got to break it in.
It's broken in now. So I'm looking at the trade deadline. Like I said, I think the Rangers win. I think the biggest L of the trade deadline is the Yankees.
Sure.
You went out and got a okay relief pitcher and then a very bad starting pitcher at the trade deadline. So my hope is that the Yankees end up with a losing record because it would be the first time in like 21 or 22 years.
Yeah, but did the Yankees do just enough to say that they did in a division that, let's face it, like I mean, the AL East is just bananas. Like the Yankees are in the bottom with a winning record. I just feel like why devote the assets for this year when you can finish with a winning record and miss the playoffs entirely?
I get it. No, and they have
the Yankees will always spend money. I wouldn't be worried about it. This is not the season I'm willing to push my chips in.
Right, and they're housing two of the best offensive prospects in baseball in Double A right now. They're just waiting.
Yeah, and you come calling, anyone's gonna be like, "Well, we got to start here."
Yeah. So I'm thankful that the Yankees take an L because we just don't get to say that too often.
But in my opinion, it's not an L.
You don't think it's an L? That's fine.
No, because like I said, like I'm not making moves for the sake of making moves. If it's, you can give up the stud if it's really that final piece. Because a lot of times it really is that simple. And of course, just because you make that trade doesn't guarantee you anything. But if you can fill a gaping hole or do something like that, I think what the Yankees did was just did just enough to fill some holes and hope that some people in front of them either get injured or falter in some way. Because put the Yankees in the Central, and they're probably making more moves.
Oh, for sure. The AL Central is the fact that the Twins did nothing blows my mind.
Why would they? I just don't. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. Well, the Royals did nothing as well, but the Royals have nothing to provide. Really, I mean, the Guardians and the Tigers were the only two teams that kind of made a call to action. The Tigers are just kind of, and even they made one move, right? They traded Lorenzen to the Phillies. That's it. And
right.
The Tigers are going to win the AL Central.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, I love what the Guardians did just because I don't think they were going anywhere this year. So it's just, let's stock the cupboards up a little bit.
I'm glad they traded Amed Rosario.
Yeah, me too.
Because
they have a log jam at shortstop in the minors, and it makes sense.
And he's played
bad. Yeah,
bad. He's been bad this year. He's arguably, I believe, statistics would agree with me that if you look at total numbers of games started, Rosario is the worst shortstop in baseball right now,
especially on the defense. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's in terms of like runs saved, infield assist, errors, blah blah blah, all of it around together. He's the worst one. So I'm glad the Guardians got rid of him. Obviously, he was one of the big parts of the Lindor trade. Him and Jimenez were the centerpiece of that, and unfortunately, Andres Jimenez has had a little bit of injury, so he struggled a little bit. So
yeah, but he was an all-star last year.
He was. Right, and I'm still high on him. Injuries, and
they signed him to a pretty team-friendly extension.
They did. So I'm glad they got rid of Rosario. Sometimes you just have to say like, hey, it's just not working out. He can go to the Dodgers and be a utility guy for him, and they'll make the wild card somehow, some way. The Dodgers always do it. But yeah, so trade deadline, I think the Rangers win. I'm still sticking with my Yankees being an L because my L is all based around them having a losing record. That's where I'm at. If they can have a losing record this year, baseball has somehow like kind of centralized itself. But I think that's a podcast, brother.
I think so. I think that might do it.
All right.
Be excited to watch some football tomorrow, and really feel like after this week, after we see it, we smell it, kind of that taste of football is in the air. I think we're really going to start diving in here. Maybe
so
some over-unders and some previews.
I think we're pretty close to getting back to Wednesday nights again.
Yeah.
Aaron said we're gonna roll in some over-under. We're gonna give some bold predictions. We'll do some team coverage too. Obviously we did a little bit of that with the Browns and the Bengals last year. We tried to cover the Colts. So we'll get back into that. We'll start getting with the Bills boys again here soon. So football is upon us, dude. I'm stoked.
Excited.
It's
excited. It's just the best time.
It's the
especially
best
like
time
at the beginning of the year, because it's like it's fresh. It's still warm out. Like I love it.
And so Corey and I have not done a podcast together since the Bengals have lost the AFC Championship game.
Is that intentional?
I don't think so. But it's been a while since he and I have been on the screen together, so it could get a little loosey-goosey, I think. It might get a little loose when he and I get on there. So we'll see.
Excited.
All right, man. Appreciate you tuning in, everybody. If you're not listening now, make sure to listen to us on wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and we will be back next week.